Unsolved Northwest team is speaking with victims' families and detectives and digging through the archives in hopes of bringing some of Washington's nearly 3,000 unsolved cases into the spotlight. This collection of stories includes the mysterious disappearance of a professional Mount Vernon snowboarder, the fatal shooting of a Whatcom County man police called an ambush, and more.
You ask anybody about Josh Corin and they'll think of a board, whether it's a skateboard or a snowboard. The mountain was his life. His life revolved around snowboarding season. When it wasn't snowboarding season, then you would catch him skateboarding. He was doing what he loved. He was his happiest then. He ate, breathed, did it. I am Crystal Ogle, and I'm Josh Corin's sister.
My name is Jenny Corin. I am the youngest sister to Josh Corin. Since I can remember, started out skateboarding, and then the moment snowboards came around, he was up at the mountain.
So from that point on, Josh entered a very dark phase. He was in a lot of pain. He was very traumatized and didn't know how to do life.
My name is Josh.
That's when Josh started hanging out with a different crowd and started getting into serious drugs and became a serious drug addict. He was just spiraling out of control. His contracts that he had and sponsorships by skateboarding and snowboarding companies were what he used to help support himself. And when he didn't have that, he needed to rely on others. They opened the board shop. My mom was hoping, I think, that that would feed what he was looking for and give him something to look forward to. A small fire had broken out in my brother's room. He was nowhere to be found. The fire was rather small, they were able to put it out, but they had found evidence that he had climbed out of his window on the second story and jumped to safety. He was nowhere to be seen.
Mount Vernon police assigned an investigator to the case shortly after the fire. A spokesperson for the department says the case is still open, but say they've not had any new leads in a number of years.
Just brings back so many memories and what the potential he had and where he would be right now.
And so as the years pass, there's more and more that he's missing, and not knowing is super hard.
It's something that we've had to deal with for 20 years, not only for the fact that I no longer have my brother, but he had a 10-month-old daughter, and that 10-month-old blossomed into just a beautiful young lady.
Investigators say a black Wright sneaker washed ashore sometime Friday near Pillar Point.
The detached feet are found in shoes, but no other remains are ever close by. shoes and feet washing up. There's been a dozen of them or so, and you hear about them over the years, and it's just kind of a unique local phenomenon.
Since last August, 5 human feet have washed up.
9 feet have washed ashore.
Then all of a sudden, you start questioning all kinds of things, because there's somebody that's connected to that in a real way.
What's up?
I try not to cry or anything. I miss his laugh, his comfort, his voice, I miss everything about Antonio.
Hi, Mom.
I'm Jenny, and Antonio is my son. We were best friends. We talked about everything. I was fairly young when I had Antonio in high school.
I'm hard too. Not yet. You guys having fun?
So Antonio celebrated a year sober in 2016. He ended up relapsing, unfortunately, around October.
We got it so good here.
And then he was not able to live at the sober house. His addiction was kind of getting the best of him again, and he came across one of his friends, Andrew, and he said, yeah, come on with me. You can sleep on my couch for a while. So we've always liked Andrew, and he had came over to our house around, I don't know, 7, 8 to pick Antonio up. It was really cold out, and made sure he wore a couple pairs of socks and some boots. I hugged Antonio. That was it. That was the last time I saw him. 3, 4 in the morning, I get a call from my friend Jessica saying Andrew was in an altercation with Antonio, and Antonio had ran away. Antonio's friend Andrew is the last person to admittedly see Antonio alive, and he knows a lot more than what he is telling people.
Is he a person of interest in this?
Yes, he is. He took a polygraph. He was told initially he passed. The person who reviewed that initial polygraph said another test should be done. Well, when they went back to do that, he declined. Frustrating.
Nobody wants to talk. Andrew's no longer cooperative after he was cleared.
He self-reported to his DOC officer and to others, including Jenny, that Antonio had stabbed him. So we have an altercation. It just doesn't make sense. There's more there.
There was no solid DNA and no witnesses that want to come forward.
Well, he's been missing for 2 years, but tonight an Everett man is presumed dead.
I knew he was dead. When I reported him missing after the 2 weeks, I knew something had happened to Antonio.
And then in January of 2019, somebody on the Jetty Island out in Everett here came across a boot and found a foot inside the boot.
I get a call from my detective, and he sent me a picture of a boot. I was insistent that that's his 2 pairs of socks. I know that I bought those socks. Those are his boots, and they must be brown because of the water. And I'm freaking out. I couldn't move, just hysterics, because I knew that was Antonio.
The Snohomish County coroner says a foot that washed ashore on New Year's Day on Jetty Island belongs to Antonio O'Neill.
That was tragic, but it's solidified. And the weird thing about where Jetty Island is the house Antonio went missing from is literally a 5-minute walk to that river. And then the mouth of the river is where the island is.
This is the 10th Street launch, I think. We came down here on New Year's Day in 2019, I think it was, 2019, 2020. Come out here recreating with the kids. We were running back and we thought, oh, we'll just hike along Jetty Island a little bit before we end the day. Just beach combing, just kicking around the beach.
An average person, you know, probably would just walk right past that and not even look at it twice, but something drew them to it, and they went over there and found my son, what little we have left of him. But I want to meet the people who found it and just thank them.
So I want to meet her. I want to, if she wants to, if I can help her and she's looking for help, then I'm going to help.
We're heading to Jetty Island, the boat launch. Gonna meet Mark. He found my son's remains. I'm looking forward to meeting him so I can thank him. I'm extremely grateful. Nervous. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Jenny.
Holy cow. It's good to meet you. Oh my God. Seriously. I am extremely grateful. I have so many questions.
I got all the time in the world.
Oh my gosh. I'm just so grateful. If you would have never been so curious to just take a second look at that shoe boot, I would have never found any bit of Antonio because that's all I've found so far. And it's amazing.
This is retracing our steps all the way. The weather's even similar. It's warmer today, but it's a lot like this.
You remember where it is? Where it was you found him?
Yeah, about.
Is that another eagle?
Anybody? You want to check it?
Yeah, because I don't have my glasses.
That's why I carry those things too, actually.
Oh, it's a bald eagle?
2 bald eagles, yeah.
2 of them.
An adult and a juvenile. The adult's eating.
That's good.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool. I just want to get justice for Antonio, and I'll do whatever it takes and keep going and keep it in people's faces so nobody forgets, and he deserves it. My boy didn't deserve this. So, yeah. Thank you, Mark, for all of this. Yeah, honestly, I can't thank you enough. Yeah, seriously, I can't thank you enough. It's crazy. It's so crazy. That's what I'm saying, man. If you just wouldn't have been there that day. So grateful.
This is Lincoln Street. This is kind of the known way to the back road of Everson. This is the route that Jeff took to get home when he had a few alcoholic beverages. Obviously, the person that's responsible for his murder knew this.
Somebody knew, and they were waiting for him.
It definitely was a murder that was set up.
Well, he was a real sweetheart, and when they would go out to play, Joel always watched after him.
I'm Joel Little, and I was his older brother. He was always my best friend, and then later on in life, when we were fishing, I was running the boat, and he was my right-hand man.
It was July 2009. Jeff and Joe Little were working as commercial fishermen in Alaska.
I was in the engine room, and he hurt his knee. He had to come home to have it looked at, and in less than 24 hours of being home, he was gone.
The night of his murder, Jeff decided to go out to dinner with a few friends, then went to a local bar for a few drinks.
We're standing at the corner of West Main and Harkness Street. This is Herb Neiman's restaurant where Jeff Little was last seen. On that typical night that Jeff was here, not a lot of people. He got here somewhere between 9 and 9:30, had 3 or 4 drinks, came outside to smoke, and then left in his vehicle.
A suspicious person was seen with Jeff moments before he decided to drive home.
And they described him as scruffy, younger looking guy. and nobody knew who he was.
The people that had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Little also would have had an opportunity to see that gentleman, and nobody identified him or knew who it was. Mr. Little was on his way home. He was traveling eastbound on Massey Road. When he was struck, the vehicle continued into a guardrail.
As somebody was firing at random as a truck went by. All the shell casings that were recovered were in the eastbound lane. That gives us information that that's possibly where the shooter was standing, which means that the vehicle may have been in the opposite lane and going around somebody.
We know it was not a robbery. He had cash in his wallet.
Detectives went to Mary Beth's home to tell her that her son had been murdered.
When he said, "We found your son's truck." And I said, "What's going on?" And then he said, "Well, is your husband in there?" And I said, "Yes." "Well, would you get him up?" Still didn't know. So I went and got Wayne up, and when he got up, he said, "Your son was killed." And I said, "That was my baby." And then I said, "The only way I'll get through this is with my Heavenly Father."
My mom told me what happened. I was in such disbelief because the Massey Road? I'm like, the road's not even a couple miles long.
And as you can see, it's pretty quiet out here, right? There's no cars coming at night. It's even less traffic.
And it would have only been people that had inside information about Mr. Little, his whereabouts, his travel routine.
Detectives described Jeff Little's murder as an ambush. He was 2 miles away from being home, and neighbors who called 911 saw a suspicious vehicle leave Massey Road.
At least one person in particular had seen a vehicle flee the scene. It's such a small town, a small area. We would have assumed at this point that we would have had at least a couple of tips.
It's been 15 years, and this case is still unsolved, but detectives tell me it's not a cold case. They do have some leads.
We feel we're really close to solving it. We have 2 persons of interest, and we're hoping that some tips will come in.
Sometimes it's hard to keep secrets for that long. Maybe you weren't even involved, but maybe you know somebody who was.
So the Elaine Robinson case is one of our oldest cases in Pierce County. That it's one of the first cases where literally the person, for lack of better, walks off the face of the earth. She'd had a few things happen around the time of her disappearance. She had a breakup with a boyfriend, but otherwise was described as just somebody who liked adventure. And she was coming up to Washington to visit a friend and just do some travel. From there, the story takes an interesting turn in that eventually it is found that she had been seen at Mount Rainier by 2 campers at Sunshine Point. When she arrived at the campground on foot with 2 dogs, wet, cold, asking if she could get some assistance, they loaned her a tent, and when they wake up in the morning, she's gone. She's left her belongings behind, and both she and her dogs are now just vanished.
Investigators have a limited amount of information about this case. We searched for more details at the University of Washington.
They don't mention ever finding any trace of her or the animals after that final sighting at Sunshine Point.
And that's a pretty good-sized search group that went to look for them.
Yeah. Detailed grid search, looks like involving 100 people. For them not to find any sign of a woman, and as we know, 2 dogs anywhere in that area near Sunshine Point. There's just so many unknowns in this story, how she got from her car to the campground where she was last seen, and obviously where she went from there, which is sort of the mystery we're looking into today.
Very difficult because unlike most crimes, you don't have the body of the crime to work with, so to speak, right? Like you don't have the person, and oftentimes you don't have a crime scene.
Not only did Elaine disappear, so did the campsite where she was last seen. In November of 2006, nearly 18 inches of rain fell in Mount Rainier National Park, causing the Nisqually River to overflow. The Sunshine Point campground was washed away. Campers were disappointed to hear this popular spot was gone. So were investigators.
As the detective, you want to be able to go back a lot of times to revisit the crime scene. Well, the crime scene may not exist any longer, so that's a challenge.
We presume that she is deceased, but in this amount of time, we also have not found her remains at Mount Rainier, and they've done a considerable amount of construction in the park.
Sometimes people refer to as the 1970s as like the golden age of serial killing. To some degree, I think that's true because there were quite a few known serial killers operating in Washington back in the 1970s.
But you can't discount the fact that that could have happened just based on the fact pattern with this young woman. I think that we have to leave ourselves open that it could be any one of those possibilities.
No one has seen Elaine in 45 years. Every tip that has been received hasn't panned out. Time is running out to get this case solved.
We're approaching that time if we don't reach out to people and ask if anyone remembers or ever heard anybody say anything about picking up a young woman and driving her into Mount Rainier. We're going to lose a generation that would have that information, and it will be completely unsolvable.
Family of a Tacoma teen is asking for the public's help in generating new leads.
Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. I want to thank all the press for coming today too.
13-year-old Angela Meeker was last seen on July 7th of 1979. Police detectives say they have never given up hope.
On July 7th, 1979, Angela Meeker left her home in the south end of Tacoma to go to the Tacoma Mall to pick up a birthday card. She was never seen again.
Right now we're at Tacoma Mall and we're going up here to 48th. Oh, it has a lot of memories. My childhood growing up here in Tacoma. Walking to the mall. We used to go to the mall a lot, but back then it was safe.
My name is John Meeker, and Angela Meeker was my second daughter.
Again, you can just look right here.
Okay.
Let me just get your first and last name, please.
I go by Dee, but my name's Deanna. Deanna Nee. I'm Angie Meeker's older sister.
She was 13, 2 days short of being 14 when she disappeared.
So we lived this house. The neighborhood looks so much different.
A lot of memories from this.
Oh yeah, my whole childhood. I remember I gave her some money, and then she left to go to the mall to pick up a birthday card. She was supposed to be home for her birthday.
And it's been 45 years.
Well, I want to say over a year we kept those presents just sitting there.
If she was out there, she wouldn't have found some way to get home. And the only reason she's gone is she can't come home. There's some really sick people in this world.
Angie went missing in 1979, but police didn't open a criminal investigation for 2 years at the family's urging. All these years later, they're left to wonder what investigators may have missed in that time.
I personally knew from day one or day two that she didn't run away. I know she would not have left us like this. I just knew it. I gave up hope of ever finding her alive a long time ago. I hate to say that out loud, but
the biggest is not knowing.
The not knowing is the hardest part.
Tacoma police aren't releasing many specifics about this investigation, but the family insists this case is not cold. They tell us police have sites where they're actively digging and have faith for what the future will bring.
At least when you have somebody's body, you know how they died, you know what they went through, and you got to have peace when you put them to rest. We don't have any of those answers. My dad is getting up there in age, he's in his 80s, and he would like to find her before he's gone.
Closure. It's the hardest word in my life. I just hate that word. There is no closure.
Missing persons cases, murders, and other mysteries are solvable, and you might have the piece of information that leads to answers. Visit king5.com/unsolved to read more, and while you're there, you can also suggest a case we should look into or leave a tip.